Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. We will just start with some simple housekeeping for now, and then we'll move into our introduction. But most of you guys will notice that you're on mute for now. And if you can, please remain on mute. That would be great, just to help with the speakers. And also just to let everyone know, this is recorded. So just in case, just so you guys know, this is a recorded event that we do plan to post and use for either future marketing or on our website or our YouTube. So just keep that in mind. If you do have any questions, I'm here. My name is Lauren Carter. I'm the Director of Membership for the Culver City Chamber. We also have Monica, which I don't know where she's on your screen, but we have Monica here, who's our Office and Communications Coordinator from the Culver City Chamber. Thank you, everyone. Any questions you have, you can drop it in the chat, and either myself or Monica will make sure to answer your question as quickly as possible.
All right, so shall we get started then?
Yeah, go for it.
Perfect. Okay, so welcome everyone to our Women in Business Speaker Series, where we'll be focusing on reopening and refocus. The Women in Business Council serves to foster Culver City's chamber mission by supporting women who lead through their professional and community endeavors, and whose influence is felt in Culver City and beyond. The council strives to inspire, empower, connect, promote, and support women in business in all stages of their career. The events, I just wanted to make sure that you all know that the events are curated by our Women in Business Council, and if you're interested in learning more about the council, please reach out to our chamber. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Patty Rhee. She's a board member and also a member of the council, and she's with Yanai Chaney Architects.
Hi, everyone. Really great to see you all here. It's Erhlich, Yanai Chaney Architects, just to clarify. No worries. It's a mouthful. Yeah, so we're really excited to be here today, and we've got a great group of panelists. So I think maybe we can all do a brief intro about ourselves and our where we work or our industry, and then also just like the current status of what your business and industry is, and then we can get into some questions. And then we're hoping to have some time at the end for some Q&A with everybody included. So why don't you start, Marcie? Oh, you're on mute.
I thought I'd start by telling everybody to unmute when you speak. My name is Marcie Smolin, and I have a business called the Actors Circle. We've been in Culver City for 17 years, and we teach acting classes for children and adults. Actually, during the pandemic, where our property was sold. We were not told that they were selling it. So we all had to move. We used to be on the, do you know where the Culver Palms Animal Hospital? It's on, we were at 4475 Sepulveda Boulevard. So they sold that property and we all had to move out in December. Sorry about that. No control over the sirens. Anyway, so I've moved. I'm now on the corner of Washington and Sawtell, not far. We've been doing our classes on Zoom since last March. I have not had any in-person classes. We're not back in person yet, simply because it's hard to navigate how to have a group of people together in a room for 3 hours safely. We are planning on going back in person soon. When we do go back in person, we'll be masked, and I'm probably vaccinated right now. We'll probably be. I know that's a controversial topic, but that's I think where we're at this point. But I have some interesting things that I've just learned right before the meeting about the entertainment industry and what's happening. Do I have time to share that? Would you like me to share that now?
Maybe we can do our intros first, and then we can dive into
that. Yeah, because I got some really good info.
Yeah, and Marcie, how many people are in your group? Just so we have a sense of how big your business is.
We teach classes and private coaching. So, probably 100 students, 150 students, not in the class. The classes have about 10 to 12 at a time. And it's all film and television. And, like I said, we've been in Culver City since 2003. So that's who I am.
Thank you so much. Samantha, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Reichanback. I work with Insperity. I am actually the safety consultant for the Northeast. So in Boston, that's where I'm based. And I handle all of New England, Tennessee, Michigan as well. So I handle the Midwest and the Northeast for safety. Insperity is a PEO. We're a full service HR provider, but we also do risk management and worker comp and employee benefits. I fall under the workers' comp side of things. So we've been doing a lot of everything's been virtual Zoom. We've started going back to seeing some clients in person. I actually had my first one in over a year and a half yesterday. So that was really wonderful to see my clients, back face to face instead of over Zoom, or the amount of emails that I've been getting or text messages of photos. So that's a little bit about, but I handle all the Northeast, and it's been a challenge, but also kind of interesting in terms of the fact that how multiple types of businesses have been handling this lovely time that we're in with COVID and getting back to the workplace. They've been really working hard on getting back and trying to promote people to coming back in and making them feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll want to pick your brain about that. And Naheemah, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes, Naeemah.
Naeemah, if you could share a little bit about yourself as well.
Yes, hi everybody. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Naheemah McMicheaux-McCallop. I am the owner and founder of Story Inside You. I support businesses with I'm an HR advisor and organizational consultant, and I support businesses with executive education and coaching, along with emotional and mental well-being services. And so for me and my industry, it's really been very interesting. I definitely understand where you're coming from, Samantha, and really working with leaders to be sensitive around the area of how to support their team and staff in coming back to the office, and what that looks like to do it from a conscious place that always celebrates dignity for all. So one of the things about me is, I also support leaders in disrupting burnout culture. And that's one of the big areas that, in coming back into the workplace, how do we do that and also harmonize and uplifting humanity as well?
Thanks, Naeemah. I think there's a lot that I can learn from you as well. Just to give a brief background about myself, I'm a partner at Erhlich, Yanai, Chaney Architects. We're an architecture firm based in Culver City for about 3 decades. And we're a firm of about 50 people. We have a smaller office in San Francisco as well. And we have been, being a medium-sized firm, during the pandemic, we pretty much shut down, but we've kind of opened it up in the summer and made it optional. So we're kind of sorting through all these issues as we speak. Okay, so I'm going to launch into the questions, and really the questions, feel free to answer if you want to contribute, and if not, everyone's required to answer. So, but I want this to be a very casual discussion. I guess the question is, what have been the main pressure or pain points as you've been contemplating coming back to the workplace, or what you've seen in the industries that you work in?
I'll jump in. I think one of the pressures for my particular business is that a lot of what we do, some people would rather be doing in person. And I was getting a lot of calls, even at the biggest part of the surge, where, with people saying, oh, you're doing your classes in person, and, we couldn't. And so that's sort of been a challenge. I really had to redo my entire business plan during COVID. And I think that it's important for everybody in business. I think it's Naheemah who said it's our new normal now. It is. Everything's changing. For example, I coach people for auditions for film and television. I just found out that Netflix, that it was just in the news, so I'm not sharing anything out of school. Netflix is now going to be requiring vaccine cards for everybody working on their sets. They're the first ones. A lot more are going to follow. And I think it's good. I think it's time. But that's going to be controversial, you know, it is. And as far as like auditions, you know, actors don't go into offices anymore. Everything's on Zoom or self-tape. So I had to redo my business plan, and I'm constantly talking to my clients about they have to redo their own personal way of thinking. I think it's something we always have to be educating each other about, because everything's going to change. And I don't really think things are going to go exactly back to what they were, you know? So that's,
I agree with you. Yeah, I've seen, at least from the various industries. So I cover anything from construction to manufacturing to pharmaceuticals and just tech companies. So each one has different pain points, but I will say the majority is how can we still provide a level of service to our customers the same way that we did in person through Zoom. You know, they're having a hard time just trying to balance it, but they're also having a hard time in terms of feeling safe in their work environment. So some of them have been gone back, but they're smaller companies. So they're, you know, up here in Boston, they're not large facilities that you can spread out and you can have 6 feet distance. It's just not possible. They're very small, tight, cramped spaces. And some of these operations are 24/7. So they have multiple people touching these machineries throughout the course of the day. So there's a lot of different pain points, but they're just like, how can we feel safe again? And now that we're going back and, you know, everybody wants, you know, them to be vaccinated, but there's a lot of pushback from companies that saying they don't want to mandate it. And I mean, it's a give and take, but at the same time, you know, I always encourage my clients, you know, to being open with your employees, sharing and, you know, having different surveys throughout their time and saying, hey, you know, what are we liking so far through this? If you are back to work or if you're in a hybrid stance, how are you guys liking this? Is this something that we can continue to do? Or is this something we need to reevaluate or something we can add more? So some of the things like, you know, they've been being burnt out. A lot of them have been working X amount of hours, especially if they're in more of an office space, they're working late into the nights because they're trying to get things done and they don't have a work-life balance where they can separate it. And that has been a very big challenge. And me trying to teach my clients being like, hey, you have to separate. You have to separate it. You have to have a stop time because you are going in. I mean, I'm getting emails at 11:30 at night. And I'm like, I don't answer. And then I'll answer in the morning and they're like, I kind of thought you would answer earlier. And I'm like, no, I cut off. I've been in this work mode of, you know, being more remote for pretty much since I started with Insperity 7 years ago. I you know, have learned that. It took time to learn, but I've learned it. And with clients that are more in the manufacturing setting, you know, they're trying to ramp up production faster. So they're working more hours now than they ever were before. And they're getting burnt out so much faster. So that has been a big one, is just trying to figure out how we can keep everybody safe, but at the same time, you know, that we don't get burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you uplifted that. I actually recently did a workshop on work-life harmony. And I say that's intentionally because balance doesn't exist, but harmony can. And that's one of the things that I've been seeing a lot with my clients and executives is like, they're trying to find balance and they're never going to achieve it. It's period. And so And I love that you mentioned too that, you know, because this is new for everybody, it's like my clients, they don't know, they weren't, you know, this is new. So how do you put that structure together when you're still navigating and it's still changing? So I just think there's so much room and opportunities for companies and leaders within these organizations to up level their employee assistance program, to really check in with their employees. And I love, again, that you mentioned surveys, because that's one thing that I, in working with my clients and C-suite executives, is talk to your team. This cannot be a top-down decision. It has to be one where you are engaging your staff members into this conversation, because just dictating what it should be is never going to work. And you're not going to get the buy-in. And it's true. Statistics show that now more than ever, staff members are working more hours, later hours, and there's no separation between work and home.
You know what? That is so true. I know that I personally essentially never stop working now, you know, because being, you know, teaching online, which, you know, makes me need to be more available to everybody, and they feel I'm more available. I am getting calls and texts, you know, till 3 in the morning now. It's just, it's an interesting mindset. I think when everybody's working from home, there's no set hours anymore.
Well, it's like on us basically to create our boundaries and to stick to that and make it clear to others, I think, you know.
Yes, that's a good point.
Because they're also, you know, mothers or people who have young kids where they can't really, they're kind of at the mercy of their kids' schedule. And so the time that they can get to their work might be different than the 9 to 5. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I feel like there's been a lot of, at least within our office, just this kind of having to be very flexible, you know, but also understanding that everything is a little bit mushy in terms of scheduling too.
Right. And also, and along with the lines of that, I think that that's where there's so much opportunity for companies to provide resources, right, that show their teams how to do this, right, that provide workshops, that provide the trainings, that provide, you know, coaching to support the emotional wellness of their staff, because this is something new. And the fact is, and I love, Marcie, that you mentioned that we're never going to go back to this so-called what it was. We can just say goodbye to that, because it's not going to happen. And the thing is that we're going to be adjusting every single day, because it's going to change every day. And it's like, we're going to have to learn to pivot and adjust every day. So it's like, we have to have the foundation of tools to support us so we can have that solid ground, right, to know how to manage.
100%. And that's something we are seeing constantly, that, you know, with the ever-changing laws and guidelines, now with CDC changing it's forever you're trying to pivot and having to, you know, talk to your clients, and me dealing with various states, having to know and keep route of which one works for them and what doesn't, because Massachusetts is a little bit more towards like California. We're very more heavy and regulated than Tennessee, where they're very much free for all for the most part. So, you know, when you have that, you gotta, you know, work with those clients and being like, hey, you know, some of them are still timid, and being like, okay, you know, we want to tip our toes. How can we tip our toes going back into the workforce in the workplace? But at the same time, you know, how can we do that in a very safe way? And it's been a balancing act, and it's been, you know, going back and forth with them, seeing, okay, what works for you? This might not work for all clients. So keep trying to, you know, we're customizing things so much individually that it's been a challenge.
Sorry about that. My iPod's just died, so I missed the last 30 seconds or so there. Okay, well, let's talk about, so we talked about pressure points, pain points, and then I think a couple of you also mentioned like things are not going to go back to what they were. Can we talk about things that were like the silver linings, the things that worked well actually for your business, your staff, what you're seeing in the industry as you've started to come back to the workplace or continue to work in this new way?
Well, I think one of the greatest silver linings is my business is global now, where it was not before. It is absolutely, I had a class this afternoon and there was my students, you know, from Los Angeles and Culver City. And then there was somebody from Norway, somebody from Japan, somebody from Italy. And that's so fantastic to me that, you know, all over the world, what I teach and what we do is available. So that's been a huge silver lining. And I've met such interesting people. It's very cool. And last night in class, we had somebody from Japan and her internet kept going out and she's in Tokyo. So, you know, we were all like, what's going on with the Olympics right now? Look out your window, you know? And then her internet kept going out and she goes, sorry, there's a typhoon coming. And, you know, it may hit Tokyo. It's messy. So it's like, you know, we're right in there with what's going on in the world right there in our little Zoom room. That's super cool. Sorry, I got a little excited.
Good.
So that's one thing I've noticed.
Yeah, I would definitely say, you know, in terms of what my clients have done, and even as us as Insperity, what we have done is, you know, they are still, you know, we're very much a people, you know, we're humans. We like to interact. We want that social connection. And we are still seeing that. Even though we're in Zooms and we are not seeing face-to-face, and, you know, some of us, if we are seeing some face-to-face, you know, we're wearing masks, we're social distancing, you know, but we still enjoy we still enjoy it, but we can still have that social interaction. So like I'm on Zooms like so many times a day that it's, you know, it's just the way of life. But like I went to my client site for the very first time. I've been on Zooms with them for some weekly, it would seem like. And they're like, you know, we still had that human interaction. We still felt you were still there in it. And now you're here. It translated, it correlated. It wasn't like an awkward, like, oh shoot, like, this is the first time meeting somebody all over again. No, it was still really good, having good conversations, but it was just also though nice seeing him in person, but we still had that human interaction through Zoom. And so seeing that, you know, at the time I would never have thought that, but I'm seeing more various of my clients. So having more people, we're seeing more things. We're able to have other consultants, you know, from other areas come onto these calls, and we're doing walkthroughs of a facility on a Zoom call. They're literally taking their computer and they're literally showing us and walking around their facility. But we could have, you know, there could be another 2 consultants, 3 or 4 consultants on this call, and we're all picking out different things that maybe we wouldn't have seen on a in-person visit, because it's only then you. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to see everything that you can possibly see in a potential hazard. But this way we're able to add so many more people to it, and they're noticing things that maybe I wouldn't have noticed. So that has been a really cool thing to see from this pandemic, of seeing how we can adopt the Zoom life into our workplaces and how we can do our jobs and yet add more people so we can benefit our clients even more.
That's beautiful. What I'm seeing from my clients is, I would say the key word has been innovation. You know, being able to rethink positions and how they were structured before, to realize that, you know, a lot of the, I won't say a lot, but a good portion of positions can actually be done from home and done well, right? When traditionally you're looking at this one position and like, it's only an in-office because that's the best way that it works. And so I think a lot of C-suite leaders now are rethinking the structures of their business to say, you know what, this can work. You know, our company ethos can work, having, you know, majority, keeping in line with work from home, versus, you know, making that shift to where everybody comes back into the office because now we can. So that's what I'm seeing. And also one thing that I want to uplift is I love I'm seeing a lot of like collectiveness. Like there's this beautiful, just this beautiful vibe of like, you know, this team, like we are a team. And that's something that I feel like I didn't see as much prior to this pandemic, is where team members, this collectiveness of team members really coming together, and also having the focus be on, you know, uplifting the need for mental and emotional well-being, and the conversation around mental health. And, you know, I see companies making that shift to even offer, you know, yoga services or mindfulness, or taking a time for meditation, or really promoting that their team and staff members go for a walk, right? Don't just sit at your desk, get up and move, take time to breathe, right? So that's something that I'm seeing as a shift.
Yeah, that's 100%, because I deal with ergonomics, and you know, a lot of people in a workplace setting, you know, I would go in and look at their workstations and adjust them so that way it works best for them, so they're ergonomically correct and they're not having any issues. Can't do that when you're sitting at home at your kitchen table or on your couch. So, you know, I've encouraged always my clients there, I'm like, take walks, stretch. You would be amazed on how much more you could actually get done if you take just a few minutes out of your day to stretch, to move your body for 5 minutes. And then you can go back to your desk and you would feel refreshed and re-energized, and your body is not staying in such a static position. And so then you're not getting as many, you know, a lot of people with, you know, we type a lot now, more days than ever. And we're seeing a lot more carpal tunnel injuries coming around, or a lot more hand cramps that people are like, oh yeah, I got to stretch those hands out. They're really starting to hurt, or their ears are starting to hurt because they have their headsets in all the time. So, you know, working with them and being like, hey, you know, this is what you can do to help alleviate some of those pressure points there. And you can feel so much more energized to then go back to do your work and being like, okay, yes, I can do this for another hour, 5 minutes, go do another walk, stretch, meditate, and then come back and do it. I've encouraged so many of my clients to do it. And a lot of them have taken those suggestions, and they've said they're pretty much adopting this. If they go back into the workplace, they're like, we got to continue this because we're getting more production. And we're feeling so much better that we're not having as many back issues or wrist issues than they would normally have had.
Wow, you just inspired me. I want to do the wave right now. No, that was really inspirational. You know, too, something else I've noticed, we're talking about Zoom meetings, you know, and that's where most of my people are meeting up. And even if someone wants to talk to me on the phone, I used to go, yeah, no, I don't want to get on camera. I'm so used to it now. I'd rather see people's faces. And it really hit me that in Zoom meetings, sometimes we're actually having more FaceTime with people than we would in business normally. Yes. And I think you get more of a connection with them. Like what you were saying too, you know, what people are saying, you know, you go and it's not that weird, awkward first time thing, because you're seeing how they are when they talk and move, and, you know, not even non-verbally, you can watch people. And
exactly. That non-verbal, man, those cues can really help if you're like, oh, this meeting is not going so well, let me turn it around.
I also think that just as women, it's, I mean, maybe I'm getting a little, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I do feel like there's a lot of pressure on women in particular, just like your appearance and how one presents themselves in front of others. And I feel that I found that in a Zoom call, like you only have to worry about from this point up, you know, and you don't have to wear uncomfortable shoes. You can wear whatever feels comfortable on your feet. And it's like less pressure and less feeling of like, you know, someone's checking me out or whatever, you know, and I feel like that, you know, that alleviates some pressures in some ways for me at least, you know.
Oh, I agree. My eyelash game is on. My pants and shoe game, not so much.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Marcie. Right. It's, you know, dressing up from the top and pajamas at the bottom.
100%. I do not look forward to the day that I have to put back on heels, because that is not going to be a fun time.
I know. Right. And it's it makes you kind of reflect on it and question, like, what, you know, because sometimes we actually do have a meeting that we have to go meet someone out there for, and it's like, it takes a lot of time, you know. And I feel like time has been one of those things that has become a much more like tangible and concrete during this pandemic, not only for me, but for a lot of our staff. And I think that the time that people have gained from not commuting, from not having to go from meeting to meeting, you know, that car time, I feel like, you know, while there may be some benefits of like decompressing and that, I do feel like people have more time for themselves to do things that they've wanted to do with this newly gained time. And some of them are working more hours, I get that, but I think a lot of them are also, they're in a better mental state. They're a bit more balanced because they don't have to be in a car for an hour and a half just to get to the office, you know?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, I feel like this pause has allowed so many, if they have chosen to take it that way, to really reprioritize and to decide what really matters, right? And time is one of those things that we will never get back. It is truly our greatest asset. So in having more time, again, conscious choice, it's one of those things of realizing, you know, what am I going to do with this time now? What impact am I going to make? What is going to be my influence? What is really important to me? And that's where I know, me personally, you know, those are the questions that I have asked myself in this time of pause. And, you know, some of the questions that I know the clients that I work with have asked themselves. And to me, it's been a beautiful opportunity to see the growth, right? And the expansion, not only in companies, but also in individuals.
So I guess we can move on to another question. What have you seen in terms of your employees? I don't know if this may be students or within the industry, because people are often rethinking things, you know, and rethinking their values, or where do I want to live, or, you know, all these things has that affected just like retaining, rehiring employees, you know, employee satisfaction, those kind of things? I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I can definitely say from seeing with my clients and things like that, and seeing and hearing what they're saying, they have had a hard time hiring. A lot of people left, or they had to downsize at the time, and then they tried to bring them back on, and they either got new positions, or they brought them on, but they have to ramp up more production to keep afloat, and they're trying to hire more. And that's been a hard thing. Nobody wants to work. And so that's been a really hard part, because now they're trying to figure out how can we keep more automation, so more robotics. And a lot of these are mom and pop shops that I'm going into, some of them. And that's a really hard thing, because they can't afford the robotic side of things. They need the in-person and the employees, and they're trying to figure out new incentives, new ways to keep bringing in, you know, the new hires, and trying to entice them and being like, listen, we are a great place to work at. But they've been getting a lot of like pushback, with at least with the government, and being like, you know, with all of the, I'm drawing a blank on what it is, but they don't want to go back to work yet. And that's been a really hard thing for them in trying to, you know, keep growing, or trying to gain back some ground from being maybe lower downtime, you know, during this pandemic. Now they're trying to ramp up some to keep afloat. It's been hard to hire, and they're looking at different ways that they can, you know, more robotics, more automation. And that's really sad, because they really would like to hire employees.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people, who've left Los Angeles.
Yeah.
who, you know, have gone, you know, I don't have to be here anymore. So I have students, you know, people within the industry that I work in who left. They just, because they have found they can work remotely from anywhere. So yeah, what is that going to do to places that need bodies there in person as we start to open up? And people also, I think one of the other challenges is right now, like in Los Angeles, Culver City, Los Angeles, with what's been happening with the Delta variant the last even week, how much in person do we have? How do we know what's safe? It's hard to know. It changes to me like every 2 hours if I watch the news.
Yeah.
Don't you feel that way right now? It's just constantly changing.
Yeah.
Well, you know, how do we know what the right thing to do is? I mean, even
changing for sure.
What? Constantly.
I mean, had our office, we called it a soft open over the summer where it was totally optional. People wanted to come in and we were kind of using it as data gathering, you know, observation to see how many people would come in and use the office, how people were using the office. But then this mask mandate happened and it just threw a wrench into everything. People were just starting to come back. You know, we had our summer barbecue and it was great to see everyone. But then just this mask mandate, and it's like, now no one wants to come in again. So I totally get it. I don't want to wear a mask sitting on my desk all day. So it's this constant pivoting and pivoting and pivoting. And it's, there's a lot of like uncertainty and there's a lot of, it's getting weird. It's wearying too, you know, to not have certainty, I think. So.
Yeah, I agree. It's very draining. It's very draining on employees and employers. And it's where, you know, where your mental toughness has to come in. Like how mentally tough are you? And I kind of use like the Olympics as an example. You know, these are some of the best athletes in the world and they're mentally super tough. But then you look at Simone Biles and she had a withdrawal, and you applaud her for, you know, knowing within herself that she could not mentally do this. And I mean, it's a very hard thing. And you're asking employees or employers to make these decisions where, like you said, they're changing constantly. And LA is a very big one that continuously changes. New York is another big one that likes to continuously change. And so you're just trying to, you know, how can we keep afloat? And it kind of is like, how mentally tough are you to keep pivoting? And so that way you can, you know, see the other side, you know, every time think we see the light, another pivot. So. Yeah,
I absolutely agree with you. And, you know, oh man, it's like, I even think about like Naomi Osaka, right? And the fact is that, you know, I am so grateful for their courage, and what it uplifts is the fact that our mental health matters. And we have all been through a traumatic year, and to some, we kind of gloss over it, but I think we need to spend more time actually healing some of that trauma, because we have had to learn how to pivot. And in those pivots, there has been trauma that has taken place. And I think that we have to learn how to heal, not just only on an individual level, but also learning how to heal within our organizations and learning how to do that as leaders and supporting our teams in that place of healing, but also, you know, still being productive, right? Still being able to execute the work. So it's really having it's a delicate, right, conversation that has to take place within oneself and then also within these teams and organizations.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, I'm thinking maybe now is a good time to see if anyone out there has any questions. Feel free to unmute yourselves and ask, or feel free to type it in the chat. And if no one has any questions, I guess, well, that can keep going. If anyone has anything, please put it in the chat. Is there anything for the panelists that you wanted to talk about specifically? And I know, Marcie, you had mentioned that you wanted to speak to entertainment industry. I don't know if you've already covered.
Well, I think I said that I had, right before class, I'd gotten this announcement that Netflix had changed their policy to vaccination records. And that's something, I don't know if the entertainment industry is, taking that as a model, but Samantha, I know that's your area, but I think that's going to be more and more. And I'm going to do that simply because I work when we are back in person, when it's safe to be back in person. I am still for a while going to, because I have actors on the stage, like breathing on each other, and talking. And I think that I would rather lose one or two people than put everybody in jeopardy. I think that's a choice that we all are going to have to come to at some point. What is our policy going to be? And for me, I mean, for a while it was ever changing, but I with this new sort of mini surge that we're having, and hopefully it won't be as horrible, it's made me realize that that is definitely, because like, as we said, we're changing so much every day. It changes so much. I think that's when I feel strongly about for right now.
Yeah, I definitely will say that, each area of business needs to have a plan in place. Really look at your business plan, look at a COVID plan, look at your area and your state, know your employees. When you're looking at your employees, do you see a lot of ones that are going to be very resistant to it, that you're going to lose a lot more staff than what you expected? Knowing your employees and knowing how they feel and taking, that survey into account. That's why I always encourage, I've had a lot of different companies that are taking a survey every 3 months, every quarter. And they're seeing, even if some of them are hybrid or they're fully back in person or they're completely virtual now, they're still doing those surveys to seeing what areas that they can keep improving on. And I really recommend that, because when I'm looking at it from a safety perspective, I'm also looking at it from an employee's health and well-being as well, like their mental health and things like that. And are they getting burnt out? Because if you have employees that are getting burnt out, or they're exhausted, or their lack of focus because they're, scared for their family, they're nervous that coming back into the workplace, their injuries are waiting to happen. And because they're not mentally all there ready to go for that particular job duty. And so when I'm looking at this, I'm like, I can, if I'm touring a facility and they're showing me different places, I can see what areas need to have a machine guard, what needs to have different PPE. I can see what needs to have a different lockout, tagout station. I can look at those hazards and I can tell them. But I can't tell you what that employee still being able to do their job because they're still thinking about what's going on at home or what else is going on with their family. So having those surveys and knowing your employees and having a plan in place, even if it has to be continuously, reevaluated because things change with, guidelines for your area, if you have something in place, you can have some type of guidelines in some type of format, and then you can easily course correct where it needs to be. And with having those surveys, you can then be like, okay, yes, we're 100% virtual, but you know what? A lot of people are saying that they are having more back issues. They're saying that they just are having more wrist issues. Something is coming up more. So you know what, we're going to ask our safety consultant, can we do an ergonomic assessment or an ergonomics training? Or is there something that we can do virtually that you can kind of look at their workstations and being like, hey, you know what? Yeah, you're kind of are hovering over, bring that monitor forward some. Or, you know what, I see that you're kind of on an incline for like your keyboard. let me see your wrist, and then you can show me, and I'll be like, oh yeah, we need to get that back onto neutral because it's resisting blood, it's restricting blood flow the way that you currently are typing now. So that's increasing more chances of carpal tunnel. So, taking those surveys is really key so far that I've seen it with my clients, that I'm really glad that they have taken the time to do. Because then they can course correct throughout this entire time, and so that their employees are also feeling heard. So that's the other thing, like, during these things, the employees are then being heard and their opinions are being valued. And then in the meantime, then they will want to do well for them, and they would want to, nobody wants to have an employee get injured on the job. Nobody does. And so then they take that respect and they're like, oh, they want to keep us safe. So we're going to do everything we can to keep ourselves safe so that we can go home at the end of the day, or be done at the end of the day, and we can be with our families. But they're also then looking out for other ones, the other employees, being like, hey, yeah, I see that you guys, you didn't have your PPE on that day. We got to make sure we're sanitizing and we're wearing our gloves because, hey, I want you to go home to your family too. And they're seeing that more and more and more. And that's because of those surveys, and they're checking in with their employees. So having some type of a plan, having that I think is really key in, transitioning back into a workplace, or even if it's, you're going to be 100% virtual, you don't get to talk with them and you don't get to interact with them on a one-on-one basis, in person, and seeing their body language as much. So having those check-ins really, I think, is really beneficial.
Yeah. That's good, Samantha. I would say I've seen the same within my clients, and that's the direction that I've guided them, is definitely the, surveys, the employee org-wide surveys, but I also challenge them to implement structures within those one-on-one conversations, within their team meetings. So there is, all employees and staff members know that there is a pathway for their voice to be heard. There is a pathway for feedback to take place, because I feel like oftentimes if we only have one outlet, then it's like, okay, well, then I missed my opportunity, right? If I don't do that, then there's no other way. So I really think it's important that leaders and managers really step up. I'm going to say it, they up level, in that this is the time where, again, we have to come to a place of consciousness and how we lead, and coming from a place of a compassionate culture is what I like to call it, to where we are providing more spaces within the conversations that we're having with our staff members to get their feedback, to hear how are they doing. And it's not just about, the work, but how are you doing, right? Just asking that question to our team. If you support people in your team, ask them, how are you doing? How's it going? Because I think that's where we miss the mark in leadership, is that we get so focused on, the macro, right? The larger outcome, where we miss the opportunity to just check in on each other as humans.
Thank you. So we have two questions from the audience. The first one, what are you seeing regarding workspaces? Have you noticed employers opting to go 100% virtual?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry. Well, again, just speaking from my industry, I was talking about auditions. There are casting offices, where actors audition. None of them are seeing actors in person at all anymore. They're having them send in tapes. They're doing callbacks in Zoom meetings, and they're even doing like the first reading, when the cast is together in a table read. They're even doing that on Zoom, no matter how big the celebrities, it doesn't matter. And the casting director I was talking to the other day said, we don't foresee that changing in a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And some of it maybe never again. So a lot of things that were done in person in the entertainment industry are all virtual now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I personally, I see people one-on-one, like I still coach people one-on-one, you know, in person. It's easy to social distance and all of that. So I do that in person, but groups, bigger groups, I don't. It's all virtual. That's my answer.
Yeah, I see a lot of, you know, different ones that were in person and they're completely virtual, and they can save money then on leasing space in Boston. And I say, go for it. If you can do it virtually and you can save some money on, you know, the nice, lovely leasing space, then great. But I see actually a lot of people going hybrid. Having that flexible work schedule, having a couple of days in the office and having a couple of days where they could work from home. The biggest thing is just having those set days where you guys are all together and having some form of a structure into that is really key if you're going to do a hybrid. But I see a lot of them doing that, and I see them, they're thriving on it. And even more so if they were just, you know, when they were 100% virtual, they're actually seeing even more production and more team building now, being in a hybrid schedule than being 100% virtual. I have a lot of clients though that are in facilities that are in person. They have to be there. So, I mean, I will say that probably the hybrid is probably the biggest that I've seen them go. And I see that staying for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I find that, you know, the clients who have structures where they want to go 100% back into the office, there's a lot of resistance, and they're seeing a lot of turnover in those areas where I don't think, you know, just looking at it, it's not really fruitful, because, you know, as team and employees, we want to have options, right? We want to be able to choose what works for us and what doesn't work for us. And, you know, when we think about, I think it's the great escape for majority of the women in the workforce are leaving. Well, we have to consider, okay, there's these women, some of them, they have kids. So how is that going to work when they've been, you know, had the opportunity to juggle life, working from home, and done it well in some cases, right? To now having to go back into the office. So I definitely agree that hybrid is the best option. And for the clients that I work with, their employees and their team are thriving and happy being able to have the option to do either work from home or go into the office.
Yeah. So at our office, there's definitely a lot of people who enjoy not having to commute to work, but being a medium-sized office, people also, culture is really important to us. And so I don't think there could ever be a scenario where it's 100% virtual. And we want to do hybrid, but there's so many shades of gray there of what hybrid can be. And so that really was like what we were trying to figure out over the summer, like what seems to work. And I think it's going to be something where you test and then tweak, test, yes. And not everyone's going to be happy, and not everyone's going to be sad. So it's going to be kind of this balancing act. And one of the people that I was hoping to have join us today, she also leads an architecture firm. And it's always just interesting to compare notes with her, and that because they've started a little bit earlier on how they do it. And I think for them, it was like they wanted to have everyone in, and they did their best, or they basically said it's no exceptions. I mean, it wasn't like everyone had to come in, but everyone had to come in for a certain number of hours a week, and in person and on certain days. But they were not making exceptions, which I thought was really interesting because I don't know, at our office, it is a lot of, we are very customized and tailored to like people's individual, what's going on in their life and family issues. And, you know, so yeah, but I can see why it makes sense. So it doesn't feel like you're favoritizing maybe certain people, or, you know, I can see why it makes sense to have a policy. But it's tricky also because people have different circumstances and, you know.
Yeah.
I think and too. You know, it's not just
different levels of fear. And underlying conditions, and you know, and where our culture is such now that, you know, we have to be extremely careful of everybody. Extremely. You know, one other thing is commercial. I feel so bad for commercial real estate. Anybody who has commercial real estate right now. It was really easy for me to find a new space that I love, where I normally would not have been able to. And I feel so bad because there's this beautiful space right above me and where I am. And it's been vacant. And a friend of mine owns a bunch of property in Culver. Just like nobody's renting office space. Nobody. I feel so bad if anybody.
Well, that's my industry. So I see that. And there's a lot of uncertainty, but there's also, I think, people are hedging that it will turn around. But it's interesting to hear this panel because it sounds like there's people
think people are buying but not renting, you know?
Yeah.
I will definitely say, because I have a really unique perspective. I have a lot of clients that have to be in person. Like they're doing industries that they have to be on site, but there's no ifs, ands, or ways about it. And so when they had to be, you know, and they had to reduce staff and they can only have so many employees in an office, that really hurt them. They were struggling to stay afloat and to make rent and to do that. So they're like so happy that we could have, you know, full capacity, because it took us one of the longest besides LA to actually have Boston being able to have fully 100% occupancy in these places, in spaces. So they're having that, they're so thankful for it. But now with everything changing, they're like, oh my gosh, we can't afford to have another setback, because they're not going to, you know, money wise, for making money, they have to be in person and they have to have these people here to do the work. So, but then I have other companies that are like, yeah, we could do a wholly 100% virtual, and that's great. But I do believe that culture is a really big thing. And if you have a really great culture in your workplace, you know, if you're virtual or if you're in office or if you're hybrid, having a really good company policy or having a really good culture is so key, so that everybody would want to come back to work. They look forward to going to work. They love working with your teams. You know, having that is really essential for having a great business. And you want to have that.
Yeah. But at this point, honestly, because I mean, you may even have the good culture, but people don't want to commute, you know, and they've gotten so used to that. And for good reasons, you know, their quality of life is better. It's improved. And so it's like it's challenging. It's really challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is, and I completely understand. And I think that again is the opportunity to reinforce what are the core values within this organization, and to have those conversations again, because it's like the CEOs that I work with, it's like, yeah, of course my team and my staff knows what our core values are. No, they don't. No, they don't. Like it's so important to reinforce and embed what your organizational culture is and uplift those core values in your meetings. When you have those conversations, this is why we're here, because that helps your team know what the vision is, like their big why. I am here because we are making this impact and this difference in this organization. And that's what keeps people and team in that company, because they feel and they know that they are a valuable thread in that business. And so I think, again, it's like it's perspective, right? We can look at this as a challenge, or we can look at it as an opportunity. And to me, I share with my clients and the leaders that I work with that this is an opportunity for us to find solutions, to lean in versus to bail out, right? It's not about going back to old ways. It's not about going back to the way it was done. It's about us being innovative, and how do we do it better now and into the future, which is going to have to involve doing it together.
That's so motivating, Naeemah. That's so motivating. I'm very inspired. You're firing us all up.
Awesome.
Okay. So there's some more messages here. I just wanted to, Renee Lee from Ferrofino Interiors was saying, hi, everyone. We have been open nearly this entire time. We just had so many clients reaching out to us. We decided to be open by appointment only. This way we can restrict our contact. This has worked so well for us that we've actually decided to keep that policy even after this is all over.
Yeah, that's a big thing I've seen. Everything is by appointments, and which is also very good because that way then they can, you know, depending on what type of industry they are in, they can clean and they can sanitize and they can get everything situated for that next person. So that way you as a person coming into them know that they're doing everything that, you know, it's by appointment only. So they're going to have everything cleaned up and ready to go for me. So you can feel safe when you're going into there being like, I know I'm going to be in a better environment. And because it's only appointment only. I know I work with clients all the time, and for me, it's always by appointment only, and it works for my schedule. It works for their schedule. But I do know that there's some cases where you have to have that flexibility because things do come up. And if injuries do come up and I have to go see them or they need another perspective, then I have to rearrange things. So that way I can go and see them. So you have to have some type of flexibility. If things do come up that you're like, no, this is some last minute, you know, yeah, I have to be there the next day in the morning at 5 a.m. Yep, I will be there. And you may have to switch it, but you know, everybody's like kind of going with the flow and being flexible. And that's, I think, is a big thing that we've all learned this year is being flexible in our time that we have and knowing that certain things are going to take a higher priority than maybe something else. But, you know, scheduling it and doing by appointments only is, you know, it's a really good thing that I've seen in a lot of industries that they've been doing. And it gives, you know, their customers or whoever they're meeting a little bit more security or feel a little bit better when they walk into the facility, knowing that it's been taken care of, it's clean. They're doing their job too to help keep you safe and themselves safe.
Okay, another question. Could you discuss risk and liability when it comes to workers' comp issues when an employee is working at home? For example, falling on your way to the kitchen to get a cup of coffee. It seems so unclear. So I don't know if anyone hears, I'm not qualified to answer that question, but.
I will say, and I don't know it 100%, but I will say, yeah, some people are like, well, does that count? And it depends on your state and it depends on the area that you live in. Certain states you could get, there could be some, you know, liability there. And there's other states that's not an option. that does not work. So checking with your worker comp carrier and seeing what is under that liability and knowing those stances and then, you know, explaining that to the employees. So they fully are aware of what is a claim and what is not going to be liable. So, you know, it depends on each state and each worker comp company that you have. So I would definitely get in touch with them and they should be able to discuss that more in detail.
I absolutely agree. And just would piggyback by saying, just make sure that your policies are clear. I always say have everything in writing. And, you know, even if necessary, right, have conversations around it with your team. Like, don't assume that just because obviously when it's in the policy that people know the policy, right? So it's also good to have conversations around it. So that way, again, you're reinforcing this is what we have created to keep everybody safe. And this is what this looks like.
All right, so let me see. I think that's kind of, if there's any other questions from the audience or anything else that we want to bring up. But I think, I mean, I don't think we need to take up the entire time. Lauren, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that was great. You ladies did an amazing job at answering all the questions. I think speaking on behalf of all the attendees, that was excellent. I would love if you, all three of you wouldn't mind, we can start with Marcie, then Samantha, then Naheemah, if you can just share how the guests may stay in contact with you or how they can stay connected with you after this event, that would be great. And you can also feel free to drop it in the chat as well as the attendees. If you'd like to drop your contact information in the chat, feel free so we can make sure that we all network together.
Oh, I'm doing that right now, yeah.
Okay, perfect. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you, Patty. You're an amazing moderator. So thank you so much for guiding the discussion of this meeting that we had here. And thank you to Marcie and Samantha and Naheemah. You guys were excellent. We really appreciate all of your insight and information. And I'm sure that you guys will be getting contacted by some of the attendees after this event because that was super helpful. And again, all the attendees, feel free to drop your information in the chat as well. Just want to go over, and I will, thank you, Monica. I think you're removing some of them. So I just want to let all the attendees know, as well as our speakers, some of our upcoming events. If you enjoyed this event or you want to get involved with the Chamber even more and stay up to date on other events that we have that are coming up, one that you want to make sure that you put on your calendar is going to be November 4th. That's going to be our Women in Business Award Luncheon. If you're not familiar with what this event is, this is our annual marquee event where our Women in Business Council open up nominations throughout the community to vote women throughout 4 different categories. And these women are able to win 1 spot per category. This ceremony on November 4th is where they are actually awarded. There's typically a video component to this as well. It's a really, really fun event. I see Patty agreeing.
So much.
It is. I would say of all the marquee events that we have, like that's probably one of my favorite. So I definitely recommend that you keep that on your calendar. You will get emails soon over the next few weeks that will talk about how to purchase tickets and sponsorship and branding. Also, if you don't already know, hopefully you can see in my little logo over here, but we are officially turning 100 years old next month. So we are really excited at the Chamber to be celebrating our centennial year. And because of that, on September 24th, we will be having a centennial celebration. Again, you will get more information in your emails. If you do not receive our emails, then make sure that you drop your email in the chat and say, I'm not receiving Chamber emails, so that we can add you to our email subscription. Monica will add you to make sure that you receive our weekly emails. As always, on the 3rd Wednesday of the month, we have our morning mixers at 8:30 a.m. Hopefully some of you guys were able to attend ours that we had in July, which was our first in-person. We can't promise that these events are going to stay in person. It is possible that we're going to be switching it back over to a virtual platform. But again, you will know that information in our emails as well. We'll make sure we keep you guys up to date on that. And lastly, just to stay connected with our chamber, make sure that you visit our website, which is culvercitychamber.com. Also, we have an Eat, Shop, and Play website that a lot of people don't always know that our chamber is the one that manages this website, but it's called discoverculver.com. So if you're looking for restaurants that are still open, activities to do in Culver City that are open, any ways just get out into the community and support your local businesses, then visit discoverculver.com and you can go ahead and look through the businesses that we have showcased there. But other than that, I really appreciate all of you for attending. Again, thank you to our speakers and our moderator. Thank you to my colleague, Monica, for helping in the background with all the work on this. And we hope you guys enjoyed this event. And we hope to see you guys soon at a future event. So thank you, everyone.